The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, a space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today.
So today we have a question from Jasmine, who lives in Sacramento, California. And Jasmine asks, I saw that the NATO head, Mark, is it Rutte?
Rutte.
Sorry, Rutte. Thank you. Rutte is warning Vladimir Putin that NATO isn't going anywhere. This is after Putin said that Russia is willing to go to war with Europe. Do you guys see this as an empty threat by Putin? If so, what do you see as the purpose? If Russia did go to war with Europe and NATO were activated or was activated, what do you think the U.S. might do? Great question, Jasmine.
There's the crux of the question right there.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we've never actually seen anybody flip sides in the Cold War before, but now we have, and it's fascinating. It really is. Changing sides in the middle of a war based on the idea that you're going to make a lot more money with them, which is, I guess, what Trump meant all along when he said, wouldn't it be better if we got along with Russia? My response to that was always, why? Who gives a shit about Russia? It's a third world country with the remnants of a lot of nuclear weapons. It's a gas can, basically. It doesn't have much else but the extractive industry of oil and gas creation, and it has no ideas. It has no tech sector. It has no, there's no university system that's producing great minds or anything like that. It's a fascinating place, but it's a very empty place. And yeah, Putin threatens to make war. That's kind of his thing. He's been doing it for a while now. Where he says if too many people get involved or if he gets backed into a corner, then he's going to use nukes and he's gonna create a very bad situation for people. And Joe Biden had to navigate that situation along with the other situation in the region, which of course has come to fruition just recently, which is that Ukraine is still a fairly corrupt country. And that, when we send weapons to Ukraine, we want them to be used on the battlefield and not shipped off to Africa or someplace like that for profit for some of the government insiders who apparently are still incredibly corrupt. So, there's two sides to the coin. Neither one of them is particularly good news for anybody. But the fact that remains that Ukraine is holding on. The war will only end when Putin is dead and Russia withdraws. And the more Trump and Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner give him the idea that they're willing to sell out Ukraine or any Europe or anybody for enough money, then he's going to hold on and continue to try to win this war. Sad.
It is. It is very sad. And, Scott brings up a very good point. Whenever there is conflict, there is always corruption. I mean, it seems to go hand in hand. And I guess, I heard the same report, and I wasn't very surprised by it. I truly was not surprised by it, because there are always going to be those that are going to take chaos and under the cover of that chaos benefit themselves. And it's almost a universal thing. It's happened here in the United States. Now, it wasn't during World War I, but the Teapot Dome scandal, which was in 1921, 23, 24, where we were selling off oil reserves or leasing oil reserves that we had. And it was benefiting some of Warren G. Harding's cabinet. There's always corruption. There's always going to be, and that was really, when you think about it, that was in the aftermath of World War I. So there was an opportunity there because the United States was still trying to find itself. What is our policy going to be? We've always been isolationists. We came out of that shell. What are we going to do? And we really didn't come out of that isolation shell until during World War II. We were still pretty much hands off of everything. Yeah, it's disappointing to see that Ukraine still has the corruption that it has, but again, it's not surprising, I have to say. Is this an empty threat? Hard to tell. I mean, it really is hard to tell with Putin. Sometimes you have to look at it and say, boy, what a stupid idea that would be. Gosh, that would be total disaster. He can't beat Ukraine. How does he think he's going to stand up to the entire, Europe? I mean, that just seems like insane. But let's face it, obviously he's not the most stable genius on the face of the earth, so who knows? It is very, very possible. And as far as what the purpose is, I think we've discussed that numerous times. Putin sees the past, the old Soviet empire, as something he wants to get back to. He wants Poland back. He wants East Germany back. He wants the Baltic states back. He wants Romania and Hungary and all those states back. At his age, when you get to be that age, I always say, for me, at my age, life imprisonment has become less of a deterrent. At his age, it truly is. What's he deterred by? I mean, it's not that he's a young man. So, yeah, why not go after the brass ring that you're not going to get? I mean, what's stopping you? But I think the interesting part of this question is, if Russia did go to war with Europe and NATO, what would the United States do? That is the million-dollar question in my mind. That is, Trump is so embedded with Putin. I don't know. Would we be like Italy in World War II? Where we would switch sides?
We have.
Well, right, but not to the extent that this would be like proof positive. You know what I'm saying, Scott? Where we would sit there and say, "Wow, we're supporting Russia." Now, what would probably happen, Jasmine, is we would probably do nothing. We would not honor Article 5. We would sit back and do absolutely nothing.
I believe Scott Bessent yesterday said that we will not honor Article 5, the Treasury Secretary of the United States.
Very possible. Yeah, I didn't hear that, but I totally believe that. So my comment to NATO is why are they dealing with the United States anyway? We seem to have gone it our own way. We're going it alone, and it's a pretty lonely place when you're going it alone. Well, and this is a pretty hostile world, so we better start thinking twice about that.
Sad to say, I think you're behind, because I think that we are not going it alone. We're going it with Russia. I think that Trump has thrown as has always been the plan. The plan was Russia wanted to take over Syria and Ukraine, and they wanted Trump to just turn away. He didn't have to get involved one way or another. All he had to do was look the other way. And Trump has signaled that he's willing to do that. So we have switched sides. And Putin, is going to keep fighting, and Ukraine is going to keep fighting, but we've gone from supplying Ukraine with weapons to selling weapons to NATO to give to Ukraine, to now we're back to the Zelensky phone call where we're not sending Ukraine weapons, even weapons that they're paying for. We're not sending them. We're basically crippling Ukraine's ability to fight back at a time when Russia is selling fighter planes to Iran, at a time when Iran is providing more and more advanced drones to Russia. China continues to fund this war because it has an interest in what Russia is going to get from it. And and we know this from the deals that were revealed last week, American companies are lining up to join with Russia to take frozen assets and use them to invest in Russia, in what would be Russia, Ukraine, and the rest of the former Soviet Union, to the private benefit of these, industrialists or exploitative capitalists, or whatever you want to call them. We're not in the same position that we were half a year ago. We are now on the side of Russia. And as soon as we get our minds bent around that, the better, because Trump has abandoned everything the United States has stood for. And we can't be ignorant about this. We can't ignore it. We can't not be outraged by it. I don't know how. Lord only knows where the members of Congress are on this. But just as we're saying with a whole bunch of other things that are going on in the Trump administration, we have flipped sides in this war, and we are now on the bad guy's side. We've never seen anything like it, but that's exactly what's happening.
In my view, I would not want to bet that Putin is bluffing. I think he hopes that people will be taking him seriously, and that Europe and NATO won't take any action. I thoroughly agree with Mark. I mean, Putin absolutely wants to recapture the lands that the Soviet Union, the Peter the Great's empire. Putin sees himself as a czar. At this point, not only is Putin aging, he's over 70, but he's also been extremely isolated, and he's making decisions in a complete vacuum of information, his own little groupthink, and he'll just do whatever he feels he wants to do that will produce the result he wants. I think regardless of reality, and certainly with the United States having turned to supporting Russia, I don't know if we would put troops on the ground at this point. Nothing would surprise me. Trump has got his ICE people. Whether there would be a pipeline from high school directly to the military in the United States in the future, whether selective service would be reimposed and people would be sent to fight on the side of Russia, or be sent to prison, or families would be threatened. I have no idea. But the direction that we're going in, I think, very dangerous. Whether Trump is a lame duck president or not, he can do a tremendous amount of damage. And Vance is potentially more dangerous, being younger and more intelligent. And he also, Vance, has apparently no love for Europe, and sees the United States as a post-democracy or a post-republic, or whatever it is that he sees it as. But the Curtis Yarvin type of situation, political governance, where one ruler is going to take care of everybody and run everything. So we, the people, would be no better off with Vance. Then we could very well be in a worse situation.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, you have anything more that you want to say about this before I go into a very, very lengthy diatribe?
Well, I'm going to do a real quick one. I think that Scott and I probably are saying the same thing. I think that from my perspective, the idea of have we switched sides? Scott seems that he treats that by what I'm hearing from him as an active thing. I think that we would be switching sides by being conspicuous in our absence, by our inaction. And that is how we would be supporting Russia. I don't believe that the United States in any reality would put boots on the ground to go against the Europeans. That would be an alternate universe even I couldn't even imagine. But I think that probably what we're looking at here is we're looking at basically, throwing up our hands and saying we want nothing more to do with it, and that again, I agree with Scott. That only benefits Russia. That's the only one it benefits, and but I still think that the Russians would stand about a snowball's chance in hell against the entire might of the European Union. Go ahead, Scott. Go on your diatribe. I'm ready.
Okay. This may take a couple of minutes, but
okay.
So I first I'll start where we agree. I don't think that the U.S. is putting boots on the ground in support of Russia. Okay, so I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that that's part of the deal. I think the deal is simply, and again, I'm going to go back to something that Trump has said for a long time now. Wouldn't it be better if we all got along? Right? He said that in 2016 during the campaign. He said, he at that point, if you remember, he still seemed to think that he and Putin had met together when in fact they had not met. And he still seemed to think that Putin had called him brilliant or a genius or something along those lines, when Putin actually had called him flamboyant. But it was mistranslated on purpose to Trump as being brilliant or whatever. They were in the same 60 Minutes together. There was a story about Trump, but there was a story about Putin. And for some reason, Trump had this delusion that they were like in the green room together, where we all know from decades of watching 60 Minutes that everything is taped and edited and put together. It's not a live show where there's a green room and the guys sit there together and chat while their segment is getting ready to go on or goes on. So, and there's a lot of crazy stuff between Trump and Vladimir Putin that is pretty one-sided. Trump actually once tweeted back in the days when he was tweeting, will Putin be my new best friend? I don't think Putin has best friends. I think Putin has sycophants that, he allows to make a lot of money. And this is my point. For decades, the right wing has talked about global elitists that want to create a new world order. And I have heard this from people that I know very, very well. Every time there's an international treaty or something like GATT, right? The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trades, or the Bretton Woods agreement, or NATO itself, or the UN, that the right wing of this country has bristled and said that's just one world government there. Or, if they want to really be horrible about it, they call it godless communism, and they try to say that the Jews are taking over the world, and we got the Great Replacement theory, and then you have some Freemasons in there that are, part of the cabal, and you have the Illuminati if they don't like the Catholics. It's the basic beginning of movement conservatism grew out of that fear, right? Modern conservatism grew out of the Red Scare. It pitches liberals and progressives with welfare state policies, international programs like foreign aid, right? Which we were talking about, like USAID, as part of a global collectivism that's going to replace the United States with a communist, collectivist, one world government. This has been dogma on the right. And every time some kind of, I forget what it was called, there was a global climate pact, COP 25 or 24 or something like that that I remember a friend of mine screaming about. This is one world government. They always talked about Barack Hussein Obama as being an internationalist or globalist. George Soros is a globalist. That's a code word for international Jewry that Henry Ford would be very comfortable with. And Donald Trump is the end result of what started as conservative, as the Red Scare, and then moved into movement conservatism and is now Trumpism. And Trump wants to work with Vladimir Putin. Why? Because he knows that Russia is corrupt and it suits him to a T. And he loves the idea of working with a corrupt government to make tons of money. And there's $300 billion of Russian bank assets frozen in Europe, in European banks. And Vladimir Putin, through Kirill Dmitriev, who's the head of the sovereign wealth fund of Russia, has been pitching the idea to American businessmen that American businessmen and Russian businessmen should work together to get that money and to beat the Europeans to Ukraine and to the Arctic and exploit the extractive industries in both of those places for vast mineral wealth, and create a joint government that's, I don't know what it is. Russia's government is like $2 trillion or something like that. But that all the guys who are playing right now, Steve Witkoff, the Trump brothers, Jared Kushner, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, this guy, Kirill Dmitriev, who's the head of the Russia's sovereign wealth fund, even though he's Vladimir Putin's guy, is actually U.S. born, was a former Goldman Sachs banker, right? So lived right here in New York, and a whole bunch of other connected people, right? Some fella named Gentry Beach, who's a friend of Donald Trump Jr., has tried to acquire a stake in Russian Arctic gas projects if they become relieved from sanctions. Another Trump donor paid $600,000 to lobbyists close to Trump Jr. to try to get control of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, if the sanctions ever come back and that's ever reconnected. All of this is essentially one world government with Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, probably 1 and 1A, and the rest of the world kind of wondering what happened. What happened to the United States of America? But it will be gone. And this is scary stuff, but it's not a dream. It's not anybody it's not a conspiracy. It's actually happening. And so far they've been denied because Ukraine is fighting back, because NATO is held together, because Trump hasn't taken that big next step yet. But we are not any longer on the side of Western values. No, not in this administration. And shame on Marco Rubio for going along with this, because he should have known better. That is where we are right now, moving in the direction of oligarchs who don't believe that capitalism and democracy work well together, right? The Curtis Yarvins, the Peter Thiels, and the Russians, who really say that they're not, certainly there's no more communism or anything like that. All they want is to reconstitute their empire, and it would be good for everybody if they were able to do that. And I think Trump believes it. And a lot of these businessmen don't know what they're dealing with when they're dealing with Vladimir Putin. And they think that this is actually going to benefit them and their families, and that this is a good thing. It seems crazy, I know. It really does seem crazy. But we are like a step away. We are denying Ukraine weapons again. We are denying NATO our help, which NATO needs in order to resist Russia. I don't think that Europe can defeat Russia without the United States. With the United States, NATO would crush Russia, and it would probably lead to bombs being used, right? It would lead to more disaster. There's nothing good. I mean, this is a line that has to be walked, but we're not walking it right now. We've decided to go the other way, and that we're going to join up, and we're going to be basically turning the United States into a vassal state of Russia, on purpose for the benefit of the few. And that is my diatribe. That is where we are.
Good diatribe. I like it. All right.
It is sickening.
It's sad. You know, it really is. It's sad to see that we fall into this. To me, it really is a shame. All right. So
yeah. Thank you for the question.
And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershworth, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium dedicated to providing solutions to social and political issues for NGOs and international government agencies. Through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research, the Phoenix Research Group advances understanding and practical strategies for complex challenges. The Phoenix Research Group is a division of the Phoenix Research Institute, the producer of the Nova Society podcast.